I'll never forget the day I checked my phone and saw $1,043 had landed in my investment account. I was sitting in my cubicle eating a depressing salad when the notification popped up. I just stared at that number for 5 whole minutes. Not because it was enough to change my life overnight, it wasn't, but because for the first time ever, money showed up in my account without me having to work for it. My name is Will, and that single moment completely changed how I think about money. Here's the thing, nobody tells you about making passive income. We're all obsessed with the wrong number. Everyone talks about net worth. You see people bragging on social media about having 2 million, 5 million, 10 million in assets. That's great. Honestly, good for them. But here's the real question. Can you actually spend your net worth? Can you pay your electric bill with it? The answer is no. What you actually need is cash flow, real money hitting your bank account every month like clockwork. That's the only thing that buys you real freedom. Most people think passive income is like flipping a light switch. You're either broke and working a regular job, or you're rich and retired on some beach drinking fancy cocktails. But that's not how it actually works. There's this whole middle zone that nobody talks about where you're still working, but the constant money stress starts to disappear, where you actually have choices, where your boss suddenly has way less power over you. And getting through that middle zone means hitting very specific money targets. Just like saving your first $100,000 is the hardest part of building wealth, earning your first $1,000 per month in passive income is incredibly difficult. It feels impossible. You're working hard, putting money back in, trying to optimize everything, and it barely seems to move. But once you cross certain thresholds, everything shifts. Not just your bank account, your entire psychology changes. Today, I'm going to break down the 3 monthly income targets that will fundamentally change your life and show you the actual math you need to hit them. Let's start with the first milestone, validation. This is $1,000 per month or $12,000 per year. This is the number that proves the whole concept isn't just internet BS. If you're taking the traditional route with stock market investing, using something conservative like the 4% rule or dividend yields, you need about $300,000 invested to generate this. Let me say that again, $300,000 to make $1,000 a month. When you see it written out like that, it sounds crazy. It is crazy. That's exactly why most people never get there using only stocks. But here's where it gets interesting. You can reach this milestone way faster if you're willing to put in what I call sweat equity. This is where things like YouTube channels, digital products, rental properties, or freelance work come in. These are what I call active passive income streams. They require work upfront and maybe some ongoing maintenance, but they generate cash that isn't tied to your hourly labor anymore. A rental property needs occasional fixing, a YouTube video needs to be created. But once it's done, it pays you while you're sleeping, while you're at your day job, while you're doing literally anything else. Why does hitting $1,000 per month matter so much? Because it's proof that this actually works. It's the moment you stop just reading about passive income and start experiencing it, you realize this isn't a scam. It's not just for people born into money or tech millionaires. It's a real system, and the system actually works. There's also a practical side to this. Like $1,000 covers groceries and utilities in most places. In cheaper areas, it might even cover rent. It's definitely not enough to quit your job, not even close, but it's enough to feel like the trap you're in is starting to loosen. And if you don't spend it, if you put that $1,000 back into your assets every month, your growth speed doubles. You're not just adding money from your paycheck anymore. Your money is now adding more money by itself. This first milestone is brutal. It's the hardest one because you have the least leverage and the least momentum. You're trying to push a car uphill. But once you get over that hill, momentum finally starts working with you instead of against you. Now let's talk about milestone two, survival. This is $3,500 per month or $42,000 per year. The personal finance world often calls this lean financial independence, and this is where your life genuinely becomes different. The math here requires somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 in invested assets if you're using traditional methods, or if you prefer real estate, about 2 to 3 rental properties that are completely paid off with no mortgages, just pure cash flow. Why does this number matter? Because $3,500 per month covers what I call the big three: housing, food, and transportation. These are the expenses that create real fear in people's lives. The rent is due, the fridge is empty, the car just broke down. At $3,500 per month, those fears disappear. You're not wealthy, you're not buying luxury cars or flying first class, but you are secure. Your basic survival is completely handled. This is what I call the toxic job shield. If your boss is terrible, if your workplace is toxic, if you wake up dreading going to work, you can leave. You won't end up homeless. You won't starve. You have a safety net underneath you. That psychological shift is huge. It's impossible to explain until you experience it. People who have this level of passive income take bigger risks. They start businesses, they change careers, they negotiate harder, and ironically, taking those risks often leads to even more income. You're not rich at this milestone, but you're free from the constant terror of losing everything. That's worth more than most people realize. Finally, there's milestone three, abundance. This is $8,300 per month or $100,000 per year. This is where the math gets almost ridiculous. To generate this passively, you need roughly $2 to $2.5 million invested. At this level, if the market has a good 10% year, your net worth increases by $250,000 without you doing anything. You could literally take the entire year off, not earn a single dollar from working, and your wealth would still grow by $250,000. The psychological shift here is complete freedom from trading time for money. You're earning a six-figure salary while you sleep, while you travel, while you're sitting on your couch watching Netflix. At this level, you can afford almost any reasonable luxury without touching your principal investment. Nice dinners, international trips, a good car. The lifestyle inflation that would have destroyed you earlier is now completely manageable. But here's what's critical to understand: the difference between milestone two and milestone three is about luxury, nicer things and more comfort. The difference between milestone one and milestone two is about survival itself. One proves it works, the other gives you freedom from fear. And most people completely misunderstand what they should be focusing on. They obsess over net worth. They check their investment accounts every single day, watching the numbers bounce around like a slot machine. But here's the truth: you cannot eat net worth. You cannot pay rent with a portfolio balance. What actually changes your life isn't the size of your pile of assets, it's the income that pile generates every month. That's the difference between feeling wealthy on paper and actually living differently. Cash flow is oxygen, net worth is just stored potential. And the journey from zero passive income to meaningful passive income isn't a straight line upward, it's exponential. But before you get to the exponential part, you have to survive the absolutely brutal early phase. Because just like the first $100,000 in net worth is mathematically the hardest to reach, that first $1,000 per month in passive income will test every bit of discipline you have. Most people think passive income is black and white. You either have a soul crushing job where you trade time for money, or you're on a beach somewhere while money rolls in automatically. That's fantasy. There's this massive gray zone in the middle, a twilight phase where you're making money while you sleep, but you're definitely not retired yet. You're in this weird in between state where freedom is visible, but you can't quite touch it yet. That gray zone has three specific levels, three monthly income numbers where the math fundamentally rewrites your psychology and your options in life. Let me break them down with complete honesty. The first target is $1,000 per month, $12,000 per year. This is what I call the validation milestone. If you're doing this the traditional way through dividend stocks or index funds, using something like the 4% rule, you need roughly $300,000 invested to safely generate $1,000 per month. $300,000, that's not pocket change. For most people starting from zero, that could take 10 years of aggressive saving. But here's where it gets interesting. You don't have to do it the traditional way. You can reach this milestone faster using what I call active passive income, YouTube ad revenue, digital products, a single rental property with positive cash flow, an online course. These methods let you trade work upfront for recurring income later. You're not buying the income with a huge pile of money. You're building the income with effort, then stepping back. Why does this number matter? Because psychologically, $1,000 per month is proof of concept. It's when the theory becomes real. For years, you've been reading about financial independence, watching videos, playing with calculators. But until you see that first four-figure deposit hit your account from something other than your job, it's all just ideas in your head. $1,000 per month makes it concrete. You realize, oh, wow, this actually works. Yeah, I can actually do this. It stops being a fantasy and becomes a real project you're working on. But there's a second reason this milestone is critical. $1,000 per month is a safety valve in a low cost area that covers rent. Anywhere in the country, it covers groceries and utilities. If you lost your job tomorrow, $1,000 per month wouldn't replace your full lifestyle, but it would keep you from being homeless. That psychological buffer is enormous. That you start making different decisions. You negotiate harder at work because you're slightly less desperate. You take calculated risks because complete financial ruin is no longer one paycheck away. And if you don't spend that thousand, if you put it back into your assets, your compound growth doubles in speed. You're not just adding money from your salary anymore. Your money is now contributing to itself. This is where the exponential curve starts bending upward. But getting to this first milestone is absolutely brutal. It's the hardest one because you have the least leverage. You're pushing a boulder uphill through mud. Every dollar you save feels tiny, every month of progress feels invisible, but once you finally get over that hill, momentum starts working for you instead of against you. Now let's jump to the second threshold, $3,500 per month, $42,000 per year. This is what the personal finance community calls lean financial independence. And this is where life genuinely transforms. The math varies wildly depending on your strategy. If you're using boring index funds and the safe 4% rule, you need just over $1 million invested to hit this target. I know that number sounds painful, but this is why the vehicle you choose matters so much. If you prefer real estate, you can often reach this milestone with significantly less capital, roughly $600,000 to $800,000 in paid off properties, because rental yields are typically higher than stock dividends. You're trading more hands on work for a lower capital requirement. Why does $3,500 per month matter? Because this number covers what I call the big three: housing, food, and transportation. These are the expenses that create existential fear in people. The rent is due, the fridge is empty, the car broke down. At $3,500 per month, those fears completely evaporate. You're not buying luxury cars, you're not flying first class, but basic survival is handled. The floor beneath you is solid. This is what I call the toxic job shield. If your manager is unbearable, if your company culture is poisonous, if you wake up dreading the commute, you can walk away. You won't be homeless, you won't starve. You have real options now. That psychological shift is impossible to overstate. People with secure passive income at this level take bigger risks. They start businesses, they switch careers, they say no to bad opportunities. And ironically, those behaviors often lead to even more income. You're not rich at this milestone, but you're free from the acute anxiety of potential ruin. That's worth more than most people realize until they actually have it. And then there's the third level, $8,300 per month, $100,000 per year. This is the abundance milestone. And the math becomes almost obscene. To generate this passively, you need roughly $2 to $2.5 million invested. At this level, a 10% market year adds $250,000 to your net worth without you doing a single thing. You could take the entire year off, earn nothing from actual work, and your wealth would still grow by $250,000. The psychological shift here is the complete separation of time and money. You're earning a six-figure salary while you sleep, while you travel, while you're sitting on your couch doing absolutely nothing productive. At this level, you can afford almost any reasonable luxury without touching your principal investment. Nice dinners, international travel, a solid car. The lifestyle inflation that would have destroyed you earlier in life is now completely manageable because your income grows faster than your spending ever could. But here's the critical thing to understand. The difference between milestone 2 and milestone 3 is luxury, nicer things, more comfort. The difference between milestone 1 and milestone 2 is survival itself. That's what most people don't get when they're just starting out. They look at someone pulling in $8,000 a month passively and think the journey from zero to that point is a straight line. It's absolutely not. The psychological distance between $0 and $1,000 per month is vastly different from the distance between $3,000 and $8,000. Your only job right now is to get to that first $1,000 per month. That's it. Prove to yourself that passive income is real and achievable. Everything else builds from there. The roadmap is simple. $1,000 per month validates the model works. $3,500 per month buys your freedom. $8,300 per month buys abundance. But that first milestone is the only one that matters until you actually hit it. So here's my question for you. Where are you right now on this journey? Are you at zero, trying to figure out which path to take? Are you at $500 per month, wondering if you should keep pushing? Drop a comment and let me know, because I guarantee someone else is in the exact same spot, wondering if they're the only one struggling with this. The math works. The only question is whether you'll stick around long enough to see it compound.